What is going on, guys? In today's video I will show you the top 3 best mercenary builds in Path of Exile 2 0.3 update. So in this guide I will give you a quick overview of each setup, then I will explain what skill gems and upgrades should you focus on, then as well we'll see what is the best gear and how to get it, and then finally we will go over the passive skill tree, the stats, your skill rotations, and even what Atlas passive should you use, so we would be able to get the highest damage possible and much more. And remember, if you want to try any of these builds out, then check my links in the description. And before we continue, thanks to U4GM. They are a pro website that provides POE2 services like cheap currency, then even to trade all types of quality items and gems and much more. They have also more than 20,000 positive comments on Trustpilot, and this website is really worth a try. So make sure to use my discount code KATE for extra 6% off. This build revolves around combining Ballista totems, which act like mobile mortar cannons, and then with the banners, which provide a mix of offense and defense utility. It also is designed around the dual curse setup by running temporal chains and the elemental weaknesses. So you're not just actually deleting them from afar, you're also crippling enemies and making them more vulnerable at the same time. And at its core, this setup is a true totem build. You set up your artillery, and then let it do the heavy lifting while you position, dodge, and manage your banners. For defenses, we are picking the Mercenary path and the Tactician ascendancy, which gives us plenty tools. Then armor and evasion is your backbone, but the real defense advantage will come from the fact that your totems do all the dirty work. You drop them, reposition yourself, and enemies often are pinned down or shredded before they ever get close to you. It's a build that feels tanky, but not because you face tank, but because you dictate the pace of combat. And then on the other hand, for the offensive side, the synergy here is insane. The mortar cannon totems will maintain nearly 100% uptime, especially when paired with a pinning, so you can keep enemies locked down. They're surprisingly durable if you place them correctly, and with the dual curse setup and the extra buffs like the frostbomb, you're getting the highest damage numbers of any traditional crossbow build. The way that we get these insane DPS numbers is because we are going with the Scepter as one of our weapon sets, which makes elemental scaling and curse efficiency stronger than ever. So let's take a look at our skill gems. At the center, of course, is the mortar cannon, which is basically your Ballista totem artillery. The idea here is simple. Once you drop it, it turns the battlefield into a constant barrage of explosions. The supports we link it to it are all about turning those grenades into bigger, faster, and more reliable bursts. But it doesn't stop here. Sustain and the uptime are just as important, and that's where the R package comes in. The purity of fire and vitality don't look just flashy on paper, but they give you exactly what this kind of setup needs, which is safety against elemental hits and steady stacks of health recovery. Add in the clarity based effects like the warm-blooded and the herbalism, and suddenly you've got a build that can stand its ground through the longer fights. Then we go to the banners, and this is where the whole build takes on its unique identity. Instead of being a passive side mechanic, the banners are actually active part of our build. The Dread banner will chip away at enemy accuracy, making your evasion and positioning more effective. Then War banner cranks up our offensive intensity by giving you a burst of momentum when you need to melt priority targets. And Defiance banners will tie everything together by stacking on armor and evasion, so you can always feel like you're fighting from a fortified ground. Then next we have the Wind Dancer, which is your mobility tool, and with the right supports it doubles as a soft crowd controller setup by pinning and blinding enemies while you reposition. And finally, Mirage Archer is like having an autonomous soldier in the background, constantly shooting enemies with explosives, even when you're busy activating the totems and the banners. And one important mechanic to keep in mind, we are running the Gem Enthusiastic Keystone. This means you need at least 10 red and green support gems in your setup to unlock its scaling. If you miss this requirement, then you will lose a massive chunk of the build's potential, so make sure every socket counts, even if it's just filling gaps with the offhand skills or auto attack links. Next up, let's take a look at our passive tree. Early on we invest into the nodes like the Remorseless, Fearful Perilous, and Devastation. These will give you the raw firepower and the early scaling that you need to get your ballistas online, without feeling weak in the leveling process. From there, the tree branches outwards into the Carved Earth and the Overwhelm, both of which will add consistency and penetration, so that your artillery ballista actually punches through defenses instead of scattering harmlessly. And then as the build matures, nodes like the colossal weapon and the volatile grenades will come into play. These are huge damage multipliers for your totems, which make sure that our explosive volleys will one-shot enemies into the endgame mapping. Pair this with the authority and the crossing judgment and you gain tools to handle high resistant bosses and even rare monsters that would otherwise slow us down. Then on top of it, the defenses are also not ignored, so you will take the feel no pain, fortified location, hardened wood and in the thick of it. These synergize beautifully with the Mercenary's armor and evasion focus by giving you a defensive backbone that feels sturdy without needing to invest into a pure tank build. Then for quality of life, nodes like the Bannerman and the Momentum are essential, which will supercharge your banner's mechanics and letting them flow naturally into the artillery gameplay. And finally, for the clear speed, you can't overlook repeating explosives, grenadier and artillery strike, which will push our screen coverage to massive amounts of levels. Next, let's move into the gear, because this is where your artillery build really comes alive. Your first weapon set is about utility and sustain. Something like the Life Spring or any wand with a fast cast speed will work, but ultimately you want to run a Shrine Scepter. You want to look for increased spirit, ideally plus 55, plus a solid chunk of intelligence, 30 or more, to enable that high level Frost Bomb. Then you want to craft the perfect essence of command, because our magnitudes scale beautifully with the banners, which makes them much stronger. Then Purity of Fire should be leveled as high as you can get it, and get its quality to 20% for the extra fire resistance. And then our second weapon set is where the real damage happens. A siege crossbow with the highest physical roll as possible is your dream. Best in slot would be +1 to ballista skills or increased grenade damage, paired with the attack speed and additional levels to attack skills. This is the slot that you eventually want to invest into the most into. For armor, look for hybrid bases with both armor and evasion. Zealot gauntlets, death mail or the dastard armor and the fortress sabotons all will fit this build. You want to prioritize life, resistances and physical damage to attacks, and always quality these pieces up to squeeze out the extra defenses. Then for accessories, follow a simple logic, constricting command for better banner uptime, a breach ring or the gold ring with the added physical or elemental damage, intelligence, life and resistances. Then the OG's damning is mandatory for the extra curse slot. And finally for the belt, you should get a utility or rawhide belt with armor, strength, life and resistances. And now finally, let's see how to actually play this build. The rotation is straightforward once you get used to it, so start by dropping the mortar cannon totems. Once they're firing, you can cast the Frost Bomb, which automatically swaps to your weapon set 1. Then place your banners, War Banner, Defiance Banner and the Dread Banner, which will establish your fortified zone. From there, cast the Mana Tempest if your mana drops too low, and then repeat the mortar placement. As soon as they're fired, they're volleys. In normal mapping, it's even easier, just keep dropping mortars 24/7 while your banners and the curses maintain control of the battlefield. The totems will handle the killing, so you can handle the positioning. And then for pinnacle bosses, make sure to swap Short Fuse 1 for Short Fuse 2, which will keep the curses active and maintain the Frost Bomb uptime. Overall, the synergy between the curses, banners and your artillery totems will melt even the toughest enemies in split seconds. This setup has been absolutely tearing up the endgame after the latest round of buffs, and for a good reason. Crossbows no longer slow your movement speed while reloading, and the Galvanic shard specifically had its reload speed penalty stripped away. Add in the new crossbow support gems and the passive nodes introduced into this new patch, and you end up with a build that feels smoother, faster and deadlier than even before. Now there's one small caveat: you will need to run the new reload crossbow and dodge rolling support gem with the Galvanic shards. That's because they nerfed the reload mechanics so that each action only loads one bolt instead of the entire magazine. But honestly, this feels really natural when you get used to it. Rolling between the packs while reloading will slot perfectly into the rhythm of a combat, and it helps to sell that fantasy of a lightning fast gunslinger. My favorite part about this build that you're constantly zapping, shocking and forking bolts of energy across the screen, while stacking defensive mechanics and utility to stay alive in the thick of a battle. It's one of those builds that feels aggressive and fast-paced without sacrificing mobility. You clear maps like machine gun, and when it comes time to fight bosses, you switch the gears into a carefully timed burst combo that erases held bars in seconds. So let's take a look at our skill gems, and at its core we have the Galvanic shards. This skill has been transformed into an absolute monster for both clear speed and utility. When linked with the lightning attunement, the shock, fork and the lightning exposure, you get a setup that not only hits hard but chains and multiplies across the entire screen. The fork makes your shards ricochet into new targets by spreading your damage effortlessly, while lightning exposure reduces enemy resistances, so that every follow-up will hit harder than the last. The shock scaling here is insane. The whole packs will just melt, Then next up we got the shock burst rounds. Think of this as your big AoE hammer. It's a secondary skill that locks down areas and deals devastating bursts of lightning damage. The synergy between the shards for chaining damage and the shock burst for heavy focus hits. It's what it gives this build its dual identity. On top of that, we add utility gems to smooth out the playstyle. Then next, emergency reload linked with the cooldown recovery too is essential. It makes sure that you're never left helpless when you burn through your bolts. Attrition gets slotted in for damage over time pressure against very high HP bosses, giving you that extra edge when fight drags on. And then there's the Wind Dancer, which is your mobility gem of a choice. Paired with the Precision 1, Magnified Area 2 and the MAME, it offers accuracy, control and even the crowd control management, while boosting your survivability. For defenses and curses, the build runs Elemental Weakness, linked with the Focus Curse, Heightened Curse, Prolonged Duration 3 and the Life Tap. This absolutely destroys enemy resistances and makes your lightning punch above its weight. Then on top of it, we add the Sorcery Ward and the Ghost Dance, and suddenly you've got a defensive layer that feels natural without getting in the way of your aggression. Energy shield recovery, evasion bonuses, and the curses will turn the bosses into a glass cannon, and this is the perfect setup for this build. Then next up we have the passive tree, and for this build it's crafted to really squeeze out every ounce of power from the witchhunter's archetype. We will want to start right here in this section, where you immediately pick up the nodes that boost attack speed, accuracy and dexterity. These will give you that early punch that you need to get Galvanic shards online without feeling sluggish. From there we expand into both the witch and the ranger zones by cherry picking the best crit, energy shield and the elemental penetration nodes. One of the defining features of this tree is how heavily it leans into the critical strike multipliers. So when we combine this with the Galvanic shards, natural shock scaling, the crit nodes will amplify your burst into devastating nukes that delete rares and bosses instantly. But this is not all about offense, we also build it for energy shield scaling. This acts as your safety net in a place of a traditional life pool. With the right keystones and the gear, this creates a hybrid sustain system, where you can absorb hits while recharging quickly through the Ghost Dance and the Sorcery Ward. It's a defensive engine that pairs perfectly with your evasive playstyle. On the defensive side, the lightning penetration nodes are a must-have. These make sure that your bolts slice through the boss resistances and stay active all the way through the endgame. And finally, we invest into the mana sustain and the spell damage increases. You never want to feel like you're running dry mid-battle, and this will ensure that your resources keep up with your speed. And now finally, let's see how to actually play this build. For clearing, the Galvanic shards is your bread and butter. So here's the trick, you should tap fire it rather than just holding down the key. This will cancel out the usual movement penalty while still giving you near 100% attack speed. So you're basically striding through the maps at a full speed, while unleashing a constant storm of lightning shards. And then for single target fights, you want to use the shock burst, but you must make sure that the target is the shock fire first. Apply voltaic mark and connectivity on the bosses or tanky rares, and then just spam your shock burst for devastating bursts, and then just spam shock burst and destroy enemies. With the ascendancy bonuses and the critical multipliers, you will be deleting endgame bosses in seconds, and that's really the loop. Shards for clearing, shock burst for the bosses, and curses for even more buffs. However, if you ever feel stuck on damage, then the solution is almost always a better weapon. So look for plus 500 DPS with physical or the lightning only, and not cold or fire. Rings and gloves with the flat lightning or the physical damage are also easy upgrade. And don't forget to catalyze them for the max value. Then for defenses, focus on the armor quality and energy shield. Upgrade your helmet and the chest first, then quality of your gear for 20% boost. As long as you're sitting around 3000 combined life and energy shield, then you're good to go. The beauty of the setup is how brainless it can feel once you get the rhythm down. Just use the Galvanic shards and everything around you dies. Just dodge roll to reload while moving. Then drop the shock bursts on the bosses and keep your curses up. Overall, this Mercenary build is simple, fast and incredibly satisfying to play. This build is a brand new version of the newly buffed grenade skills. Instead of standing still and firing arrows, we are now throwing grenades and detonating them with explosive bolts in split seconds. The core gameplay loop revolves around combining explosive shot with explosive grenade and stacking them into a very high speed, no aim, screen clearing machine. The clear speed is one of the standout strengths for this build. With the right setup, as you can see, you can achieve full screen clears without needing to even aim. Combine this with decent gear for movement speed and you can hit upwards of 160% movement speed. The key idea here is that you can sprint through the maps throwing out grenades and bolts without ever slowing down, and without suffering the penalties for shooting while moving. On top of it, with a decent investment, we can also one-shot bosses. Explosive grenade in particular will hit like a truck when stacked with the right modifiers and when paired with a rapid shot to preload the extra fire as damage, so you can melt pinnacle bosses in seconds. And thanks to our clever gearing and ascendancy synergy, you don't need to even worry about the mana management at all. You can simply throw, explode and keep moving. So let's take a look at the skill gems. And the build starts with the explosive shot as your main mapping skill. This is the centerpiece of your clearing setup. The way you run it is explosive shot fires projectiles in a wide circular spread, meaning that every pack on your screen gets tagged and detonated instantly. The explosions will chain off each other, and once the Herald of Thunder gets involved, it's just non-stop lightning detonation spreading everywhere. The key to making this feel smooth is the Arjune's Medal, which refills bolts automatically without even needing to reload. This one unique turns explosive shot into a seamless, fire and forget skill that you can spam infinitely. Now, while this is ideal for mapping and clearing, it does not always cut for single target bosses, and that's where our second setup comes in. So you want to get another explosive shot, and this time configure it for single target. And this is where the Nova projectiles will come into play. With the right gear, you can swap into the gem setup before a boss encounter, and shift your character from a screen-clearing grenadier into a focused artillery platform. If you're still progressing early on and don't yet have the gear to support the Nova projectiles, then you can just stick with the multi-shot 2 or the Pierce 2 before making this switch. Both of these will work fine while mapping until your upgrades will come online. Then Explosive Grenade is the other half of this equation. This skill provides massive burst damage that you need to nuke bosses or tanky rares. The combo is simple. You throw the grenade, then follow up with the explosive shot, and watch the entire screen get deleted. This synergy between the grenade and the bolt is what gives the build its identity. And then Herald of Thunder is working in the background as a passive source of shock. Every time you detonate enemies with explosive shot or grenade, the Herald Thunder will proc by chaining shock across the maps and adding even more explosions. These constant lightning arcs don't just look flashy, they massively increase your mapping efficiency and add the shock effect for single target bursts. Then on top of it, the called shots will add another layer by auto-casting will take mark every few seconds. This means you're consistently applying shock with the magnitude scaling, by boosting your single target damage and layering in extra explosions during your mapping. You don't have to think about it, it just happens automatically in the background, which works perfectly with our low maintenance build. Then the rapid shot is your pre-prep tool. Before a boss fight, you just spam the rapid shot to charge up the heat, converting it into a huge boost, so you will get 50% of your fire damage as the extra damage for your next explosive grenade. With this combo, you can preload insane amount of burst before engaging, and to make this burst land reliably, you can slot in the flash grenade as your crowd control option. It will stun the boss and keep them locked in place by giving you this free time to drop the big combo without ever worrying about dodging mid-cast. Then next, our passive tree is straightforward but very crucial to unlocking speed and explosiveness of this build. The first decision is to dedicate the grenades to the tree 1 and explosive shot plus the rapid shot to the tree 2. Thanks to the most recent patch that fixed the crossbow weapon tree bug, you can now lock both trees onto a single weapon by checking the box at the top of your crossbow interface. This allows you to seamlessly swap between the grenade skills and the projectile skills without having two weapons. So then, our main path revolves around going and investing into the spray and pray, freedom of the movement and unhindered. These are the most important nodes that transform your build into explosive monster. They remove movement penalties while shooting and stack enormous amount of movement speed. With them, you're able to fire off grenades and bolts while sprinting at a breakneck pace without ever losing movement. This is the foundation of why the build feels so fluid. The main concept of this build is very simple. The faster you move, the more ground you can cover, and the more enemies explode in your wake. These nodes also will get boosted by our helmet, which is called the Constricting Command, which I will explain a bit later in the gear section. Those nodes will give you bonus damage, attack speed and movement speed when surrounded, and with the right setup you can keep those bonuses active almost 24/7. Now let's talk about gear. Your main weapon is the Siege Crossbow. You want to start with a magic base that already has a high increased physical damage, which ideally could be a crucial tier or better. The greater exalts will fill your suffixes, and you can finish it by applying the perfect essence of the haste or the onslaught mod, and the perfect essence of the battle for a +6 roll. Then the helmet is built around Constricting Command. When we get it with a surrounded value of 5, It unlocks all surrounded nodes on the passive tree, which gives us this massive boost to the damage, attack speed and the movement speed. It essentially turns every pack encounter into a personalized buff zone. Currently, the DeFi 2 on this helmet is bugged and will not work with the mana mod, but once that gets fixed, it will completely eliminate any mana issues. Then the body armor should be the new Corsair base. It comes with a 20% reduction to the penalties for attacking while moving. Then for rings we should focus on stacking as much life as possible, since that's our primary defensive pull alongside evasion, rarity and added flat elemental damage. Then for amulets we should prioritize rarity and plus the projectile skills. I personally recommend to use the devastation anointment, but this is up to you. Then for boots we need 35% movement speed. Rich players can chase Essence of Heroes on the boots with corruption for the traditional sockets, which will allow you to slot the Pharaoh's gems for massive speed bonuses. And now finally, let's see how to actually play this build. The core rotation is simple but incredibly satisfying. So you enter a map and from the very first pack, you're firing your explosive shot into a wide circle. Entire screens will vanish in a single cast, and Herald of Thunder arcs will proc across anything left behind. Also, you don't need to stop to aim or even slow down. You just sprint forward and everything around you detonates. And then when you encounter tanky rares, you just drop the explosive grenade. Then follow that up immediately with explosive shot. And then watch the enemy disappear in a chain reaction of fire and lightning. And then finally, against bosses, you shift into a more deliberate rotation. So you start with a rapid shot to build the heat and secure that massive 50% fire as the extra damage. Then you throw a flash grenade to stun and lock the boss in a place, and when the window is open you just unload the explosive grenade, followed by the single target explosive shots from the Nova projectile setup. The result is a devastating burst that can delete bosses in seconds, before they have even time to circle through their mechanics.